First time. Some of her friends in the front row of the courtroom. Also, 5 sisters, all signing up to fight for their country. We'll meet this family of heroes as reporting begins now.
Now, Shepard Smith reporting live from the Fox News deck.
Our reporting begins this Monday with President Trump's latest misleading and xenophobic eruption of distraction and division, directed this time at a group of minority women in the United States Congress. Go back to where you came from. That's what the president wrote on Twitter just yesterday, and today he called them haters of America and Jews. The president defending those statements, and when asked if he thought the tweets might be racist, his response, not at all.
If you're not happy here, then you can leave. As far as I'm concerned, if you hate our country, if you're not happy here, you can leave.
Here are the tweets that kicked things off just yesterday. So interesting to see progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt, inept anywhere in the world, if they even have a functioning government at all, now loudly and viciously telling people of the United States, the greatest and most powerful nation on earth, how our government is to be run. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? They came from here. Then come back and show us how it is done. These places need your help badly. You can't leave fast enough. I'm sure that Nancy Pelosi would be very happy to quickly work out free travel arrangements. Those tweets targeted these 4 freshman congresswomen known as the Squad: Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York, Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, and Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts. All 4 women are American citizens. Only Representative Omar was born outside the United States. Some Republicans are criticizing the president's language. The South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham asking the president to aim higher, while also calling the women communists. Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume calling the president's comments nativist, xenophobic, counterfactual, and politically stupid. President Trump tweets that the congresswomen are racist, saying, if Democrats want to unite around the foul language and racist hatred spewed from the mouths and actions of these very unpopular and unrepresentative congresswomen, it will be interesting to see how it all plays out. And then, in another tweet, the president demanded from them an apology. Democrats have called President Trump's tweets racist and divisive. The House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, calling for both parties to support a resolution that condemns what she calls the president's xenophobic tweets. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted this morning, it's important to note that the president's words yesterday telling 4 American congresswomen of color, go back to your own country, is hallmark language of white supremacists. Trump feels comfortable leading the GOP into outright racism, and that should concern all Americans. The Chief White House correspondent John Roberts reporting live from the North Lawn. John?
Shep, good afternoon to you. The president spoke earlier today in an event on the South Lawn that was all about products that were made in America, but the questions were all about the controversy and the furor surrounding the tweet that he put out yesterday regarding the 4 members of the so-called Squad. The president insisting in a question and answer session after signing a Made in America order that would mean that to be classified as Made in America, products would have to be 75% made in America. He accused the congresswomen of hating America, accused some of them of hating Israel, hating Jews. President's critics insist that the comments that he made on Twitter were racist, but white nationalist groups have praised what he said. I had the opportunity to ask him about both of those things. Listen here. It doesn't concern you that many people saw that tweet as racist and that white nationalist groups are finding common cause with you on that point?
It doesn't concern me because many people agree with me. And all I'm saying, they want to leave, they can leave. John, what that says is if they're not happy with the United States, if they're doing nothing but criticizing us all the time.
The president did get some support, as you pointed out, Shep, from South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who called the 4 congresswomen communists, but he also thought that the president did go too far in that tweet. The president disagreed with what Graham said on that point. First, listen to Graham and then the president.
They hate Israel. They hate our own country. They're calling the guards along our border, the Border Patrol agents, concentration camp guards. They accuse people who support Israel of doing it for the Benjamins. They're anti-Semitic. They're anti-America. Don't get down. Aim higher. We don't need to know anything about them personally. Talk about their policies.
Senator Lindsey Graham said, aim higher.
So I disagree with Lindsey on that. That was the only thing. He said, aim higher, shoot higher. What am I going to do? Wait till we get somebody else in a higher position? They hate it, I think, with a passion. Now, it's possible I'm wrong. When I hear the anti-Semitic language they use.
The president was criticized by Ohio Congressman Mike Turner, who wrote in a tweet, quote, I am confident that every member of Congress is a committed American. Donald Trump's tweets from this weekend were racist and he should apologize. We must work as a country to rise above hate, not enable it. The Texas Republican Congressman Will Hurd also criticized the president, saying that the tweets were racist and xenophobic. Shep?
Well, what else are you hearing from Democrats, John?
Well, remember last week, President Trump really came to the defense of Nancy Pelosi over the feud that she was having with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the other three horsewomen of the squad. But today, Nancy Pelosi let the president have it with both barrels, tweeting, quote, when Donald Trump tells 4 American congresswomen to go back to their countries, he reaffirms his plan to make America great again, has always been about making America white again. Our diversity is our strength and our unity is our power. Remember, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar stoked a lot of controversy when she appeared to downplay what happened on 9/11, when in an interview she characterized the attacks as some people did something. But she went after the president today, tweeting, you are stoking white nationalism because you are angry that people like us are serving in Congress and fighting against your hate-filled agenda. And then quoting Bobby Kennedy, saying, America's answer to the intolerant man is diversity, the very diversity which our heritage of religious freedom has inspired. 2020 presidential candidate and senator from California, Kamala Harris, also weighed in on the president's tweets. Listen here.
It is absolutely racist and un-American. And it is an old trope, go back to where you came from, that, you know, you might hear it on the street, but you should never hear that from the President of the United States.
This afternoon, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said a couple of times that he does not believe that the president's comments in the tweet were racist, but he kept on going back to this idea that the president has clarified his comments and explained himself. So this is going to be debated for some time to come, I think, Shep.
John Roberts, live at the White House. Thank you. The Trump administration taking action to block immigrants from Central America from even applying for asylum in the United States. It's a new rule and a reversal of decades of U.S. policy. It will make most migrants who cross through another country before entering the United States ineligible for asylum protection here. That includes people escaping poverty and violence in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, who have to travel by land through Mexico to reach the U.S. border. There are some exceptions. The ACLU calling the move patently unlawful and threatening to take legal action to block it. Rich Edson reporting live from the State Department. Rich?
Shep, administration officials argue that many migrants are abusing the asylum system, generally designed to help those facing persecution because of their race, religion, or political beliefs, not necessarily economic conditions. In announcing this policy change, the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security write, quote, the large number of meritless asylum claims places an extraordinary strain on the nation's immigration system, undermines many of the humanitarian purposes of asylum, has exacerbated the humanitarian crisis of human smuggling, and adversely impacts the United States' ongoing diplomatic negotiations with foreign countries. Other officials say this policy change will deter migration from the beginning.
This is going to send a clear message, though, to people considering coming up illegally to this country to overwhelm our borders with the hope that they'll get by that first hurdle and then disappear into our interior, that isn't going to happen anymore.
Democrats are responding. One of them, Senator Kamala Harris, who's running for president. She writes, quote, the administration's move to restrict asylum for Central Americans is deliberately cruel. America should embrace its moral responsibility to serve as a safe haven for children and families fleeing violence and persecution. She and other Democrats also argued that the situation was made worse by the Trump administration when it decided to cut aid to those Central American countries, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. Shep?
Rich, this as the vice president visited a migrant detention center with lots of fanfare.
Yeah, he did. He visited a couple of centers in Texas a couple of days ago. After touring some of the facilities, he mentioned that what we saw today is a facility providing care every American would be proud of, though he also acknowledged that he had seen conditions that were tough stuff. A reporter that was traveling with Vice President described about 400 men in cages with no cots and that the stench was horrendous. Pence says he was not surprised by what he saw and that the system was obviously overwhelmed. He said the Democrats need to approve more money to help the facilities along the southern border. This is just a week after the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General released a report saying that many of the facilities along the southern border were overcrowded and dirty, to put it mildly. Shep?
Yeah, Rich Edson, live at State. Thank you. Now Cheryl Powell. Her husband and children wanted to come home. She went to walk the dog during a camping trip and just disappeared. Gone. Her husband says the only possible explanation is that somebody took her. The details on this evolving case, as our flame retardant on the landscape, started with a grass fire, moved up the hills. You can see a firefighter on the right-hand side of your screen trying to put water on a house that really appears to be lost at this moment. We've seen some buildings torched around the area, firefighters working hard, winds are blowing. Updates throughout the news hour. A search is underway in the California wilderness for a woman who disappeared while she was out camping. And here she is, 60-year-old Cheryl Powell, missing now since Friday. Cheryl Powell was with her husband at a remote campsite near the Nevada border with California. Her husband says she was out taking the dog for a quick walk while he parked their Jeep. And as he did, she simply disappeared. Nothing. It's listed as a dangerous and rugged area with steep, rocky terrain and rattlesnakes. Powell's husband says they're both experienced hikers who hike more than 24 miles each week. Family members say they think somebody kidnapped her. Police are treating it as a search and rescue case while continuing their investigation. We'll hear from the missing woman's daughter in just a moment. First, our chief breaking news correspondent Trace Gallagher reporting live from the West Coast News Hub. Trace?
And Shep, right off the top, we should know the Inyo County Sheriff's Office says that Cheryl Powell's husband is not connected to her disappearance at all. So we are now in day 4 of a multi-agency search that includes not only the local sheriff's office, but search and rescue teams from Los Angeles and San Diego. There are also dog teams, naval air rescue teams, and the California Highway Patrol is using its aircraft because they're equipped with thermal imaging. And when the terrain is that steep and rugged, thermal imaging is invaluable. The family has also started a GoFundMe page to see if they can convince anybody with search and rescue experience to join the effort. No doubt the search will take some time, but experts say that part of the Sierras also has numerous access points to water, and that over the past 4 days, the weather has not been extremely hot or cold. Bottom line, it means that for someone like Cheryl Powell with a lot of hiking experience, that area is very survivable. Shep.
Trace, this is a difficult area I'm reading.
Yeah, and that's mostly because there are so many trees in the area and the shade actually creates these blind spots from the air. There are also countless gullies, hills, and rocks that limit visibility from the ground. I grew up in that area. We were taught from an early age that if you go in to the backcountry, you never go alone. You always leave a trail. And just to give you some context, Shep, on the searches, remember back in 2007, we covered this. The famous aviator Steve Fawcett, the first man to ever fly a solo balloon around the globe, he crashed his plane in the Sierras, and even with a massive search effort, it took more than a year to find the wreckage. But during that year-long search, recovery teams did find 8 other missing airplanes that had crashed over the decades. So a lot of areas for things to get hidden and lost. As for Cheryl Powell being the victim of foul play, it's a very real possibility, but right now there's not much evidence leading in that direction. Shep.
Trace Gallagher live for us. Thank you. Farrah Powell now. She's Cheryl Powell's daughter. She's in Bishop, California, which is near the campground where her mom was missing. This must be so frustrating for all of you. How's the search?
You know, the search has been going on. I truly feel that in the last day or two, it's been, you know, significantly better on their side. We did get different people from LA coming up, from LA County. We now have more dogs out there. We have a helicopter. We're doing everything we can. My brother and I have been searching like 6 miles a day on foot. We've been tracking everything using different apps. We've given all of our tracks to search and rescue, covering areas that they haven't covered. We are doing everything we can out there.
No leads of any kind, according to the authorities. Why is it that the family believes she's been kidnapped?
So I think like the main reason is like for us the extreme unlikelihood that of her just getting lost. So given the circumstances of my dad being gone for 5 minutes and then for 45 minutes, my dad screamed, whistled, and honked and searched within 1,000 feet of where he last saw her at their campsite. If she was just wandered off, which she wouldn't because she had no food or water on her, she would have heard that. If for some reason she fell and she was unconscious, well, the close area around has been extensively searched, like more than any area. There's been dogs. The dogs would have found her. You know, like there's not huge rocks in the area. It's like the unlikely. It's like how unlikely it is that she would be just lost out there. She wouldn't keep wandering. And you know, we did just hear about a couple, husband and wife in Tuolumne, that were camping, and a man came into their tent that night and shot the husband. And I just want like everyone out there to know that while abduction and a criminal thing out there might seem unlikely, this stuff absolutely does happen.
Yeah.
We feel it's just as, you know, unlikely that she is, you know, she would have heard my dad.
Yeah.
She would have been found.
Farrah Powell, we wish you nothing but the best. I understand that the police have not opened a criminal investigation of any kind, but that you're considering hiring a private detective. Good luck. Hope you find her, and thank you. And up into Tennessee. And they say some tornadoes are possible from the deep south up to the Ohio Valley. A look at some of the damage the storm has already brought to Louisiana. Would you look at this flooded farmland? This is Plaquemines Parish, south of New Orleans. The state's governor and other local officials in that parish visiting some of the hardest hit parts of the state. And the governor says he's thankful the flooding wasn't worse, but says the threat of rising waters is not over.
We're gratified that we did not get the full amount of rain across Louisiana and the flooding that we had been told to expect. We're also very thankful of the fact that the Mississippi River stayed within the levees. We know that the Mississippi River is going to stay at flood stage for some time to come. We know that we're in hurricane season, so that obviously presents some concerns to us going forward.
Similarly, the mayor of New Orleans said that the city is beyond lucky, as he put it, that it didn't see as much rain as government agencies originally predicted. But forecasters warn some parts of Louisiana could still see rainfall totals of more than a foot. Rick Leventhal reporting live from New Orleans. Rick?
And Shepard, cloudy today, but no rain so far after 3 days of pretty heavy rain bands on and off. Nowhere near the accumulation they had warned about. And of course, the Mississippi River was in fact the biggest concern. This was the first time that it had ever been at flood stage when a hurricane was threatening to hit the city. It was at 16 feet. And the levees are designed to hold back 20 feet. And there were, you okay there? There were concerns that the surge could be 3 to 6 feet. So the levees could have been overtopped, but it didn't happen. They crested at 17. All those floodgates that were closed in anticipation of the storm have now been reopened in and around the city of New Orleans. But some surrounding areas did get swamped. Several levees were overtopped by the surge. In Terrebonne and Lafourche and Plaquemines Parish, the Coast Guard rescued a dozen people and a couple of pets via helicopter on Saturday. And there were, of course, some damages to homes and business and economic losses for fishermen and others. The governor says he knows it could have been a lot worse and says he's confident that the storm protection system will, in fact, keep this city safe.
This was the first time the hurricane risk reduction system was fully operational in the greater New Orleans area. It was completely buttoned up. All the gates were closed. All the pumps were operating for the first time ever. And it performed really, really well.
one other note of caution, all that rain that's being dropped north of us now will eventually funnel its way back into the Mississippi River and make its way back down here to New Orleans, Shep. So a river that's already at flood stage could see signs of potentially flooding again.
Yeah, Rick, from what I've seen, it looks like parts of the Big Easy are getting back to normal.
In fact, yes, the New Orleans airport and the port of New Orleans both reopened for business again yesterday morning. A lot of those oil rigs out in the Gulf that had been evacuated ahead of the storm are being reboarded. City services here are back up to normal today for the first time in a while. And good news for Stones fans, Shepard. There was a Rolling Stones concert scheduled at the New Orleans Mercedes-Benz Superdome on Sunday night. That was postponed till tonight. It is on again for tonight, so the Rolling Stones will perform here, and I can tell you that tickets are still available. Not too late to get down here and see the Stones tonight.
Wow, sounds like a good trip for you, pal. Rick Leventhal, live in New Orleans. Thanks. More power outages could be on the way for New York City. That's what a spokesperson for the power company here, Con Ed, says, who spoke with a local news station, Pix 11. He also said that engineers still do not know what caused that massive blackout on Saturday night. Tens of thousands of people in business after business from Times Square to Manhattan's Upper West Side lost power. It stretched 30 blocks and lasted about 4 hours plus. Broadway shows shut down before they even started. Cars navigated the crowded streets of the big city without stoplights, and subway trains stopped in their tracks. The spokesperson is warning upcoming heat wave could cause more blackouts, with temperatures predicted in the upper 90s, if not at 100. Governor Cuomo warned yesterday, get this, power company, you can be replaced. Ahead, Mackenzie Lueck's suspected killer facing a judge. And there's word investigators have found the leader of Iran says he's ready to talk to the United States under one condition. And are we alone in the universe? Hundreds of thousands of people say they're going to bum rush Area 51 to try to find out and see if the government is hiding aliens and UFOs inside the top secret military base. Topping the news at the bottom of the hour, the Wisconsin home where an intruder killed Jamie Kloss' parents and then kidnapped the 13-year-old girl will soon be up for sale. That's according to a real estate listing on homepath.com. It reads, the 3-bedroom, 1.5-bath home, including an indoor sauna. It's located just outside Barron, Wisconsin, about 80 miles north and east of Minneapolis. Back in October, the now convicted killer broke into the Kloss family home, murdered the teen's parents, then took Jamie Kloss to a remote cabin in the woods for 88 days until she was able to escape. In her victim impact statement for court, Jamie Kloss wrote that she was too scared to go out in public and couldn't go back home to her family. The man accused of kidnapping and murdering the University of Utah student Mackenzie Lueck and then setting her body on fire, facing a judge for the first time today. Lueck's friends say they immediately lost their breath when the suspect showed up on screen in the courtroom. Last week, we found out how Lueck died. The medical examiner says she had blunt force trauma to the left side of her head and a hole in her skull bigger than a golf ball. Investigators say they found Lueck's charred remains in a shallow grave in a canyon about 80 miles north of Salt Lake City, and pieces of her body in a burn pit in the suspect's backyard. We still do not know a motive. Claudia Cowan reporting live with more. Claudia?
And Shepard, Mackenzie Lueck disappeared 5 weeks ago today, and the man accused of brutally killing her had nothing to say at his first court appearance just a few hours ago. 31-year-old Ayoola Ajayi, as you mentioned, appeared on a closed-circuit TV monitor alongside his public defender to hear the judge read the charges against him: murder, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and desecration of a human body. The hearing lasted just over a minute, and he did not enter a plea. Some of Mackenzie's friends sat in the front row holding hands.
We just immediately lost our breath. I think we were holding hands and just, I refuse to say this person's name.
She's obviously referring there to the suspect's name. Now, this tragic story began as a baffling missing persons case, and it turned into a murder by bludgeoning. Police have not revealed how Mackenzie and the suspect knew each other, but they say that her cell phone stopped working the moment she met him at a park in the middle of the night. A search of the suspect's property turned up a human bone, part of a skull, and charred muscular tissue that matched Mackenzie's DNA. And Fox News has confirmed that just hours ago, investigators found additional evidence connected to this case along the Jordan River Parkway Trail. What that evidence is, we do not know, but it was found just about a mile away from the suspect's house. Now, the charges filed against the suspect here could warrant a capital case. Prosecutors in Salt Lake City have not yet decided whether they will seek the death penalty. They say that will happen after a preliminary hearing. Everyone is back in court there in Salt Lake on July 29th. And at that point, Shepard, the suspect could enter a plea.
Claudia Cowan live for us. Thank you. Brand new revelations today about the uber-rich convicted sex offender and accused underage sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Authorities searched a safe in his home and say they found piles of cash, dozens of diamonds, and an expired passport, foreign issued, with Epstein's picture, a fake name, and an address in Saudi Arabia. They shared this at a bail hearing today here in Manhattan, where the judge said he needs more time to decide whether to keep Epstein in custody or allow for a release on bail. A ruling on that is now set for Thursday, so 3 days from now. Some of Epstein's accusers were in today's hearing to urge the court to keep him locked up. Our producer in the courtroom describing it as emotional and tense. Epstein has pleaded not guilty to charges of underage sex trafficking, but prosecutors say the evidence against him is growing stronger by the day. Brian Yennis reporting live from the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Brian?
Shep, two of Jeffrey Epstein's accusers surprised the court today by briefly speaking at the end of the 2-hour bail hearing. They urged Judge Richard Berman to, quote, keep him locked up for the safety of the girls. Epstein shook his head in disapproval at the end of one of these victims' actual testimonies. Her name was Annie Farmer. She emotionally spoke about how she was sex trafficked to Epstein's New Mexico ranch. Farmer's attorney, David Boyce, spoke to Fox exclusively. He said Farmer wasn't planning on speaking today, but chose to after the defense tried to say this wasn't a sex trafficking case. In the last week, more than a dozen new victims have come forward. Accusers say Epstein is a convicted sex offender who would intimidate victims if freed on bail. If this man is granted bail, that victims will not speak out, do you think that it will be a deterrent?
I think it will be a deterrent. I think if victims see that he's been released, even if he's in supervised home custody, I think they will be concerned.
Farmer was standing right there next to her attorney. She chose not to speak on camera. Investigators say this morning they found a Saudi passport, by the way, inside a safe in Epstein's New York City mansion. The expired passport was dated 1982. It had Epstein's photo, but a different name. Prosecutors say that Epstein is an extreme flight risk. They not only cite his vast wealth, they obviously now point to the fact that he had that passport inside that safe. Shep?
What are we hearing from the Epstein's defense team?
Well, they're basically asking for house arrest. They want Epstein to be able to spend the duration of the trial and pretrial inside his $77 million, 21,000 square foot townhouse. They say Epstein will agree to nearly any condition and he'll pay nearly any bond, including more than $100 million in bails. They also say that Epstein over the last 14 years has shown to be responsible. They note that there hasn't been any other cases that have come up against him since those accusations between 2002 and 2005. But the prosecution says they found near thousands of photos of underage girls in his mansion just over a week ago when they went in there, which obviously makes this all a moot point, according to them, given the fact that they believe he's a current danger when they found those photos in his house. Shep?
Brian Yennis reporting live from the courthouse. Some younger siblings follow their older siblings' footsteps. Well, 5 sisters from Utah all joining the military. Their story coming up. But first, some rafters taking a big fall over a waterfall. That from a state park in Pennsylvania, about 50 miles south and east of Pittsburgh. Park officials say 6 people were on the thing and that they are all okay. Look at this. Officials say the rafters did everything right, but that they missed a sign that warned danger beyond this point. They did have their life jacket.